So, what I'll do is I'll just do an intro and ask you a question.
I'm sure, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're incessant.
No, I just want to start.
That's why I love you.
I just want to start from the beginning. Oh.
It took us a while to get the audio on.
Well, it's a stupid Windows, you know.
Yeah.
So here we
and
got.
I'm Mac, I'm all Apple products, so I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, I just want to ask you. You talked about in the past about your paranormal experiences, and I'm sure we're going to do some interesting stuff in future as well. But I thought I'd just do a paranormal episode with you and talk about our paranormal experiences that we've had together. And
I would love to talk about that. Sure.
You talked about a haunted house that you were in, so I'll let you go from there.
It was a haunted apartment. It wasn't a house. I've been in a haunted house before. It wasn't quite as scary, actually. But no, yes, the paranormal, and it's always on the periphery of what we perceive as normal, correct?
It doesn't
but
fit.
there's a whole other world out there other than our own. I think that is our own, but it's just the things that we don't always see. It's on the periphery of your eye. You hear a lot about, in ufology, there are certain things that are kind of similar to the paranormal, and that you hear about shadow people, orbs. You hear a lot about, probably too much about orbs.
Yeah,
and it's very hard to tell whether, did the person see a ghost or did they see a UFO?
Or whether it's in their brain.
Mind's
eye.
Well, something came into their perception that wasn't perceived as the normal day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
You can go to your corner store and buy a jug of milk and walk home and everything is just normal and fine, or you can go to the corner store and buy a jug of milk and have something strange happen, and it's still a part of your life.
Well, it's
the
sort
paranormal. I think it's actually the normal, but it's just the stuff that we don't necessarily understand.
Yeah, it does.
And there's a lot of stuff like that.
Does sort of does freak you out when it happens, though.
Yeah, it's always strange.
Yeah.
Synchronicity plays in ufology. It also plays in the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think paranormal and UFO field are linked, but I think there might be some crossover there.
I think there is some crossover. I don't think it's all nuts and bolts. I think that there's certainly a connection between the ethereal and what we perceive as reality. And it's actually all reality.
It might be that they're on the same sort of frequency, or dimension.
It's a dimensional thing, is the way I see it.
If aliens traveled, they might travel through a dimension, which is where this energy level is with the spirits, and it might be that intertwined. But who knows? Maybe the spirits are actually aliens that are mimicking humans. I don't
know. I'm not sure.
Not sure?
I think that, this is what I think. I think that the universe is much greater and broader than we usually perceive it to be. That there's a multiverse that we live in. And it seems that scientists are even copying to this more and more as time goes on. You've got things like Schrodinger's cat, and there's the whole thing about quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
That it works on many levels.
Although it can't be proven.
Well, they can prove that a wave can suddenly look like a particle, depending on what you expect to see.
Well, I think it's actually both.
We can disturb the universe.
Actually, it can be both. It can have a frequency in the particle. I sort of talked about that in the Tesla thing. where it can be a sort of like, rather than looking at it as a sphere, you look at it as a donut, and the frequency is where it's spinning around in a loop inside itself while it's moving forward through space as a particle. But anyway, yeah, it's very out there thinking science, and the connection with ETs passing through matter and coming through walls and lifting people out of the walls and through windows and stuff.
That's paranormal. I mean,
which is still, it's similar to people seeing ghosts walk through walls and stand next to their bed and then disappear, and so it's sort of in that same sort of area as
Arthur Clarke's law. I guess you have the 3 laws, right? And the one that I always quote is that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Mm.
So sometimes the things that seem like magic to us are just a higher technology than we're privy to. And of course, it's like taking an iPhone and handing it to an Aboriginal. It's magic, There's people talking in this little box. Do they live in there?
Yeah.
How are they talking from that? And yes, that's who we are.
There is a good video on YouTube, but I can't seem to pin it, where they meet a Amazon tribe for the first time, and the first time they've seen white people, and they show them their cameras and mirrors, and they're just thinking, wow, this is magic. And they're looking at themselves in the mirror, and they're almost, scared of it. It's quite a good video. I have to see if I can find it for you and forward it on.
You should tag me on that, Paul.
Yeah.
Tag me on that. I'd love to see
but
that. I know that we've recently encountered tribes in the Amazon that have not been in touch with the Western civilizations out there, and they throw spears at the helicopters.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Well, that's because we're constantly synchronized.
Yeah. So you're seeing that clip as well. Okay.
We've proven that synchronicity works through the mass of the Earth, because you're on the other side of the world for me. But we're always syncing on the same ideas and thoughts. And that is a thing for us.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, it does happen a lot with us talking, that we come out with exactly the same thing. and text anyway, text chat, because you haven't got time to read what the other's posted before you send yours, and then you look and see what they've said, and it's exactly the same as what you said. It's kind of freaky. But you talked about, was it a wife or a girlfriend that you were living with that had a painting that kept moving?
My old girlfriend. Her name's Wendy. I haven't asked her if it's okay to share her name with her story. It's probably okay, but...
Well, first name's always okay. First name doesn't relate to anybody, you see.
This was back in the 1990s, late 1990s, and she had a poltergeist in her house, and I observed it on quite a few occasions. Things would fly off shelves. We'd be in another room, and we'd hear a boom in her family room. And we would walk out there, and something would be in the middle of the floor that there was no reason for it to have lifted off of the shelf and flown across the room and landed there. This was a thing, and it was a recurring happening.
So you didn't see it happen at the time? You didn't see it happen at the time?
I saw it many times.
You were in the room when it was moving?
I saw it happen once, and that was enough. It would usually happen in the room that we weren't in. We would be in another room, and we would hear noise from the other room, and we would go out there, and something would have... things would fly off shelves. It was very strange. She had a friend who was actually sort of romantic about her. And she wanted him to be a friend. At that time we were an item, and anyhow, this guy was in a very terrible place in his life, and he actually committed suicide.
Okay.
The evening that he committed suicide, she had a strange vision of a burning man standing in her doorway. This I heard about before she got news that this guy had actually pulled the trigger on himself. And that's what he did. He pulled the trigger on himself. But she told me about this. She said, I saw a burning man there. I think it was so-and-so. She mentioned this gentleman's name. He was standing in my doorway, but he was on fire, and it seemed like he was consumed, and then he was suddenly gone. And, you know, and you hear something like that, and you shake your head, and it's like, well, okay, you know, did you smoke anything? Or, you know, it's like, no, I was fine. She apparently was getting ready to go to sleep, and she had this strange sighting. And we kind of, you know, I was interesting, and I left it there, and she left it there. As days went by, weird stuff started happening. Things would fly off shelves. And it was her birthday, and I painted a picture of her playing her guitar. And it was, you know, a good-sized picture. I had it framed. It was, you know, under glass and in a kind of a large frame, maybe, you know, 3, you know, using the English system, because we're not metric here in America. You know? We never, you know, they try to do that, but it was maybe like 2 feet by 3 feet across. You know, it was a good-sized painting. And it was hanging on her wall in her room. And we started talking about weird stuff that had been happening. Her TV had been turning off and on by itself. Lights had been flicking off and on. She had never experienced anything like that before. She didn't have electrical problems. It was a nice house in a nice area. She'd never experienced anything like that. No. And it wasn't paranormal. We were just figuring, well, you know, you need to get an electrician over here to look at things. And then weird stuff would happen where I would wake up when I was over there with, like, feeling like somebody had been talking to me. And she saw shadow people in her house. It was the proverbial, you know, you're lying there and getting ready to go to sleep, and then you can't sleep because you see some movement in your room, and you know there's nobody there. And stuff like that kept happening, but it just kept on rolling on, and it came to a peak. When I painted this painting of her playing her guitar, she put it on her wall. I hunted with a museum. You know, we live in the land of earthquakes here, and believe me, I thought about that too in context of this. No earthquakes going on at the time. No reason for it to happen. We were talking about her vision of this gentleman in her doorway who was on fire, and other strange things that had been happening that were along those lines. And the room seemed to fill up with strange kind of energy. It was a negative energy. Neither of us were feeling very comfortable. We were talking about this, and the room just got heavy.
Did it get cold spots?
I really don't remember the room getting cold. What I remember was that we were talking about it, and it was probably this guy, and the painting flew off of her wall. Now, this was a large painting. There was nothing on the other side of the wall. You know, it was an apartment, but there wasn't a neighbor on that side.
So it's on one of those hooks that you have to sort of lift up before it will come off.
It was a museum hook. Yeah. It was earthquake friendly.
There's no way it could fall off naturally.
No, it couldn't have fallen off naturally.
So the people can't understand that. See, they think it has to be earthquake related or whatever.
No, there were no earthquakes. There was nothing.
It's a shame. It's a shame you didn't get it on video, because that would have been really good evidence.
It's before smartphones.
Isn't it always?
Anyway, we weren't thinking about video. We were getting ready to call it a night. But the painting flew off the wall, when we were in the conversation and she mentioned the guy's name. And we had paused in the conversation, and it was almost like somebody coming in and adding their 2 cents to the conversation. The painting just flew off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It landed on the ground with a boom. It went a good 6 feet across the room, and it landed face down. How do you explain something like that? I can't explain.
No, you can't.
I tried to, you know. I mean, we weren't into ghosts.
Mm.
You know, we were 2 musicians trying to work the LA music scene. We weren't talking about that stuff. But it sort of came into her life. Now, this is somebody that had a UFO sighting when she was a child as well. I mean, she related a story where she was sitting on the back porch of her parents' house, and she saw one, like a proverbial, like a rod-shaped UFO hovering over her, and she experienced missing time. That was when she was a child. Now, I think that probably she's a sensitive and an empath in some areas, and I know she's a sensitive because she did have ghost encounters before, but I had never witnessed them. I would hear about them. She would say, "Oh, I had somebody that looked like Jesus sitting on the edge of my bed last night." I wasn't afraid. I actually felt comforted, but he was sitting there. You know, I could feel his weight, and I heard the bed springs. It wasn't like it was a specter. It actually affected my bed. And I went to sleep right afterwards, and you know, it's like you can write that stuff off as and that's what I did. I just said, well, you know, you were falling asleep, you were sort of in a hypnagogic state.
Yeah.
You know, but nobody was asleep, and nobody was, you know, we hadn't been drinking anything, we hadn't been smoking anything. You know, we were sitting there, we were talking about the subject when this, you know, this painting flew off the wall.
Yeah.
And this was after, like, okay, she had recently had a cat that she loved that had died, and she had the cat cremated and put in the ashes put in a little box on her shelf. And it flew across the room, and we heard it in the other room. We walked out there, and inexplicably, this box of ashes was sitting in the middle of the room.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange. There's no way to really explain that except, well, maybe somebody slammed the door really hard.
Mm.
I don't know, you know. But we weren't thinking ghosts. I was certainly not hoping that we were encountering anything like that. And a couple of, I mean, and then she had other things that flew off of shelves. And it seemed to get worse and worse until it became a problem. And the problem was, like, one evening the TV turned off and on, off and on, off and on. And we're sitting there. And we're getting scared. And the next evening is when the...
was it infrared remote controlled TV?
Yeah. It was a remote control TV. I mean, we had this is back in the 90s, so...
Scientists would write that off as interference with the IR
I would
detector.
too. Sure. I would write it off as that as well, yes.
But we had homestays in our house and rented out the top of our house, and we had some Chinese people living there. Well, a female with her 2 sons. She was studying English, but they claimed the top of the house was haunted. They used to have the TV switch on and off, just like what you're saying. And I've never ever seen it happen in my life. And they were glad to get out of the top apartment after a while. But I used to have the bedroom below where they used to have their bedroom and the TV set up. And one day I could hear the drawers opening and closing up there, and I thought they were home. And then I asked Mum, are they home upstairs? Because Mum was out shopping. And she says, no. And I said, well, that's really strange, because I could hear the bottom drawer of what they had up there was, I think it might have been a waterbed even up there. was a drawer underneath the bed, and you could hear it slide, and the rollers open and close. It was really freaky. But,
that is scary. That is freaky.
But
and it probably wasn't malevolent. I mean, it wasn't, some horrible.
Well, the thing is, we tried to head out because we've never had hauntings before. It turned out we rented the place to a guy earlier. Now, he was a wee bit depressed and had a mental condition, but he had his own car grooming business, and he used to smoke a lot of weed up there. And he used to bring these beautiful prostitutes up the driveway, and Mum and Dad would be looking.
Well, he was
and
inviting
thinking,
some strange stuff into his room.
Yeah, so but he smoked so much weed that Dad had to seal the top of because there was a stairwell that come down into our house, and you could smell the weed coming down the stairs. So he sealed it up with tape and stuff to keep it up there. But my dad's pretty much anti-drugs, anything, and smoking, of course.
That's a whole.
But it was a fairly nice.
There was none of that going on. I mean, when this happened, we were stone sober. We maybe had a glass of wine or something earlier.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was drug related or induced, but he used to scream out and do baby cries and strange stuff like that, and I used to bang on the ceiling wall saying, "Shut up."
Well, he may have drawn some negative things to himself. I don't know.
But he ended up committing some suicide, and I think this is this activity started after he did that. We didn't know. He left after a while. I think maybe Dad asked him to leave, and he went and stayed in some place, and he gassed himself in a car. Which is a damn shame, because
I know somebody that did that. Yeah. It was very sad.
But we started getting hauntings after that. We didn't know he had killed himself until we got a letter in the post for him, and Mum phoned up his mother and said, where can I send it to him? And she told us the story.
Well, what do you reckon that do you think that it's maybe that he committed suicide that caused the restless spirit in your house, or what do you think?
I think he liked living with us. He liked living up the top of the house, and he felt okay there. He felt the most happiest there, his mother said. So I think he come back and visited sometime. Now, the story gets a bit more bizarre. My sister was moving houses, and she come to stay with us, and she was always a ghost attractor. And I had her dog staying in my bedroom, because I had a large bedroom downstairs. Because the upstairs of the house was added on, so it ended up being another double room upstairs, and then Dad decided to close it off and make it a apartment upstairs to rent.
Sure, you guys had lodgers, right?
Yeah, so they'd come to stay, so I didn't want to move out of my room, so it was the biggest one, so I had the dog in there because it was getting upset being locked in the little hallway. And one night I was working on the computer, and it was like a really hot day, like Australia, like 38 degrees in the bedroom. And suddenly it went super cold in the bedroom. No windows open, no door open, and the dog was in a sleep, jumped up out of her bed, and was staring at a spot on the wall just behind where I was sitting at the computer. And I felt really icy cold where the dog was looking. And it made a shiver go down my back, and I was talking to the dog and saying, lay down, the dog wouldn't lay down, and this cold spot moved. You could feel it move away and around behind my back. It was really creepy, and then suddenly it disappeared, and the dog went and laid back down and went back to sleep. So I reckon that was him in my room.
Wow.
And I'm not sure.
Well, animals can perceive stuff quicker than we can. Obviously, their senses, especially dogs, are colorblind.
Yeah.
They have, their sense of smell. Of course, they say that we have maybe like 1/100th of that sense that they have. But
if the dog wasn't near, I would have thought I was losing my mind with this cold spot that was moving around. Because at that time, I wasn't into ghosts, and then I didn't get into ghosts until I started seeing the show called Taps, or the Ghost Hunters on TV, and I thought...
Sure. Yeah, I like that show.
I was more into UFOs documentaries and stuff, and I wasn't really into the paranormal. But when things started happening that I couldn't explain, I started getting more into it and seeing if there was any answers to it, and all these full spectrum cameras and thermal and all these EVPs they talk about, that was quite interesting.
Sure, there's an electromagnetic thing that happens. I mean, that's the one commonality between the whole, the whole ghost hunter thing and UFO hunter thing. I mean, that electromagnetism seems to be a very strong and just a very powerful thing in our universe that is probably not looked at enough.
Yeah, the thing is that the recorders, they say it doesn't go through the mic, it actually goes through the coil off the mic. They interact with the electronics of it to make the sound, is what they say. But
what did you wind up? Did it cessate eventually, or did it keep going, or?
You're talking about the spirit thing?
Yes. Your house.
We eventually moved from that house, so I don't know if it's still there.
Oh, it's probably still there.
It might be. They might be experiencing strange things. But
what we did, I'll tell you, we finally actually did a sage ceremony.
Oh, did you?
Like an American Indian sage ceremony.
But that doesn't always.
I felt bad actually, because I felt bad for the person.
Yeah.
If it was who we think it was.
Oh, right.
It was not a happy camper by any sense of the word, but he was one of those lost souls out there while he was alive, and then he took his life in a very terrible place. And I guess that he had focused on my old girlfriend at the time, and that's what we finally came to the conclusion of, was that it was this guy. And we did a sage. I did the sage ceremony. We got like a smudge stick.
Yeah, but that doesn't always work though. From watching these ghost shows, it's you ever watched The Dead Files? That's a nice, pretty interesting show. And
we were really. I think that the whole thing was we put salt.
Yeah.
Around the doorways.
Yeah.
Like we created a perimeter around the house.
Yeah.
And I did a smudge ceremony and just told him that, he was welcome to the rest of the world, but this house was not open to him.
Yeah. And
please go elsewhere.
All right.
And it stopped.
Yeah.
It stopped. I mean, and I'm not a ghost hunter.
No.
I'm a UFO investigator.
Yeah.
And that's weird enough. Ghosts are even stranger to me, and I don't know that there's probably some science behind it, but we certainly don't know what science that is. I don't think it's Newtonian physics, that's for sure.
No. There was more to my story, though. Before my sister come to our house, she rented a place when she broke up with her husband, and they're in this little flatlet, or just like a single room house, well, couple room house.
Sure.
And it was near a old graveyard. Look, this graveyard's on a hill. It kind of looks odd out, and you got all this new housing estate all around this place. But anyway, one night her bedroom door opened up, and two girls in paired dresses, 1900s or something like that, come run into the room and duck behind her bottom of her bed, and she was sort of waking up from it, and she tried to look for the girls, and they weren't there, and her little daughter come running in, giggling, and she said, "Where did those two girls go?" And her daughter looked at her and ran back out the room, back to her bedroom. But that's the story that she told us. And then her son would wake up in the night, I'm not sure what time, and say, "There's a woman touching his face."
Oh shit!
and she's saying,
sorry.
And she's saying,
that.
"That's all right." And she was saying, "It'll be all right. You'll be okay." And he told told my sister this, and she said, "Oh, that's strange. You're just having a dream." But we think maybe those people were on that land at some stage, maybe a house, maybe they got reclaimed graves there, I don't know. But they reckon that
we keep building on top of everything too. You know, that's the way it is.
But the theory was that woman was related to the two kids, and they all died from the flu, because flu was a killer back in those days.
Still does now.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting. So she moved from there. Oh, she had some other experiences. She said she was up a ladder putting a painting up, and she felt someone tug on her shirt for attention. So she looked around, didn't see anyone, and then she reckons she was pushed almost off the ladder. But anyway, she eventually packed up and moved to another house, which was pretty much across the street from us and where we used to live with our haunted house. And she used to have homestays, just like we did, Chinese homestays mostly. And one of the homestays said that she was in the bedroom and the pot plant lifted up and dropped to the floor and smashed. And my sister said, "Oh, you're having me on. You kicked the stand with your foot." She said, No, you're haunted." And then another Asian, I'm not sure if it was the same one or not, she said she saw a man in a top hat walk across a lounge. And of course the lounge has only one entrance to it, and there's no way this man could have sort of disappeared. It walked from one end to the other, and when she looked, there was nothing there. So she told her about that story. And sister never
Who wears a top hat?
You know.
Well,
sister thought it might be our grandfather who fought in World War II that died. Then he's keeping an eye on her, which is possible.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
But
my mom saw a ghost once.
Yeah, hang on, I'll just finish off the story. And then later on, a couple of months, she said she heard a toy in a toy box going weird noises. And she thought the kids had left on a piece of toy. So she went and had a look and opened up this lid to this toy box. And here was this little toy playing with flashing lights blinking and making sappy noise and spinning around in circles. So it suddenly stopped when she was about to reach in. And she grabbed it and found it had no batteries in it.
Oh!
So she thought that was... she thought that was really strange. And of course, this is time before.
Happen.
Yeah,
this God.
This is the time before no smartphones, like you said. So no one thinks about recording these crazy things. Anyway, she put some batteries in it and tried to get it going. She found out that it's broken. There's no way it could go with batteries. So that was a really, really strange story. But she went to a medium months later. And she said she's got a young Indian boy following her around. He's attached to her like his mother. And I'm not sure what happened, but whether she went back to her or not. But they may have moved him on. I think she was going to get his grandmother to come down from, this vortex or whatever you want to call it, the wall of light or tunnel of light, to come down and get him and take him away. And I think that she didn't have many problems after that. But again, she moved from there to us, and that's when we had some of those other experiences. And then she went from there to another place, and her kids started having more experiences. So obviously it wasn't gone. And one of the kids used to say that the cupboard door would open up by itself and slam shut in the middle of the night. And her older one used to say that his bed covers were like a heavy quilt, was being pulled off the bed all the time. And he said the F word to it and said, "Leave me alone," and go away. And it did sort of leave him alone a bit, but it was pulling off the sheets off his bed, he reckons. which is another crazy story. But anyway, he went in to do ghost hunting himself when he got older,
Wow.
in his 20s. And he's got some stories about hearing footsteps with the ghost hunting team when there's no one in this rundown abandoned house, and they could hear footsteps going upstairs and on the ceiling. And I said, oh, that would have been good to have on my channel, you know, if you had any recordings of it. And he said, no, they didn't do anything like that. But so there's some of the craziest stories I've had. But when I moved out to this new area to stay with my parents, and I have my bedroom door shut and the window locked, and one night I was laying face down in bed and I could feel something jump on my back. That totally freaked me out, and I didn't want to move because I just wanted to see if it was my imagination or not. But I could feel weight of someone standing on my back, and it felt like 2 feet, not 4 feet. And they felt like, to me, it felt like hooves. It didn't actually feel like normal feet.
Really?
And then, yep.
Did you say hooves?
Hooves,
Like
yeah,
hooves?
like sheep feet.
Oh my god!
But I thought it must be a cat. But I know I didn't have anything open in the room, like doors or windows, so I should have been alone. And then I felt
you didn't have pets or anything. You didn't have a cat.
Yeah, we did have
living
we did have a dog, but he was sleeping in a locked room with the parents. But I felt it take a step forward, and that really freaked me out. So I stood up and really quickly, and it's pitch black at night. And I tried to find my touch light, because I got one of those touch lights you touch with your hand, and it turned on, and I couldn't see anything there, and it really gave me the creeps for the rest of the night. But I eventually fell asleep again, and I couldn't wrap my head around this thing. And it's a bit like there's a episode on My Ghost Stories where she's in bed, and this thing you can see jump up on the side of the bed. It looks a bit like a demon cat, but she says that she didn't have cats or animals in the house either. And you can see this thing sort of merge into nothing. It slides back off the bed and disappears on this infrared camera. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I did a small clip of it and talked about that experience in a older episode I did on my channel. Have a look at it if you've not seen it.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet. I would love to see it. I will watch that.
Yeah, it's only a small episode, like 5 minutes or something, but it's the best apparitions caught on, Ghost Hunters TV shows, pretty much. But
why do you think that if these are actually spirits of people that we had known or had lived here, why do you think? I'm just throwing this out there because I don't really know why. Why are they?
I don't know.
Manifesting.
Well, years ago, I had an out-of-body experience, and they say when you have an out-of-body experience, you become more open.
Yes, I've had one too.
Yeah.
I had one once.
And when you're open, the spirits think they can communicate with you.
I didn't have spirits communicate with me. I was very sick in the hospital once, and I walked around my bed and I looked at myself. And I felt like I heard a klaxon bell in my head, like, danger,
Will Smith.
I jumped back into my body and then I woke up, so to speak. I was never asleep, really. I mean, I think that I was outside of my body looking at myself, and I, went back in because I didn't want to die.
No.
That was back in 1979. It was
right.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in the hospital and that happened. They didn't have me on any drugs or anything.
No.
I wasn't on narcotics. They were just observing me after I, had gone through a spell. Long story, a long time ago. But
yeah.
But yes, I've had one out of body experience.
I come across a lot of people that do talk about those, and they pop back.
It is a real thing.
Well, I was only probably 12 when it happened to me, and I was sleeping with my mum upstairs in the room where it was haunted. But it was this is a brand new house. It had been built a few years old, and Mum was a bit scared because it was a stormy night and Dad was away. So I slept with her. And I was laying there, and suddenly, before I knew it, I was pinned against the ceiling of the bedroom, and I couldn't move. And I put my hands up, and I could feel the surface of the ceiling, and I couldn't work out what was going on. And then I pushed one hand, and I sort of flipped around and saw myself laying in bed next to her, and I panicked like a big gasp of breath, and next minute I sort of remember that was me gasping for breath and in bed again. So somehow I snapped back down. Now, I didn't know anything about out-of-body experiences. It was time before internet around, and I didn't have any books on it. And it was probably around about that time I started buying the Unexplained magazine from UK to see if there was any other people who had experiences and stories on this, so I could sort of wrap my head around what just happened. But I never ever told anyone about that story. I've only just recently talked about it in an episode I did on my channel called Out of This World. I'm not sure if you've seen that one yet, where I animate it, showing what happened on the video and add my story. But yeah, then years later went past and I never had anything like that happen again. But it was a very strange experience, and
yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean,
no, yeah, I didn't want to die at 12.
Yeah, yes,
but I don't think it was related to me dying. I think I must have still been alive because
you just found like that little area.
I found that you could hop out,
slip through, and you saw yourself from a distance.
Yes,
and that happens. I mean, I know many people that have experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear it a lot, except for maybe on the here and there on some silly show on TV where you don't know if you can trust them or not.
Yeah,
but I've heard enough people that I know and trust as that I know them as completely and fully sane.
Yeah,
that have experienced
the
paranormal in such a way.
Yeah,
and you can go out of your body and turn around and look at yourself.
Yeah,
hovering over.
Well, that's
body.
what happened to me. So.
Yeah, it happened to me too. I didn't really hover over so much as walk around, and then the klaxon bell went off. It's like danger, Will Robinson.
Well, I didn't hear
and I jumped back into my body, and I remember it.
Yeah, but I didn't hear anything
there,
like that.
And it was a hospital bed. I remember grabbing the rail of the bed and going, "Oh my God, what the hell just happened to me?" And, somehow or another, I got out of my body, and I looked back, and I saw myself.
Yeah. I didn't hear or see anything apart from myself in bed. I didn't... Yeah, it's sort of strange. It was like unreal, or surreal, or whatever you want to call it, but...
It's surreal. It wasn't unreal, because it was real. I mean, you experienced it.
Well, I always thought maybe I was losing...
Back and it's not like there's going to be witnesses to that.
Yeah, but you always wonder if you're losing your mind or going crazy or something when that sort of thing happens.
Well, that's up to the listener.
Yeah.
If this does wind up on one of your podcasts. I mean, a lot of people have gone through similar things. And I have, Paul, so I don't question what you're saying. I've experienced the exact same thing.
Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
Yes. And I don't know if I believe in the Mandela effect. No. I mean, it's certainly something that's out there. It's a meme right now.
Yeah.
And I don't remember Joseph Mandela and the way that the guy described him, or he didn't remember it being a certain way, and the universe shifted, or he found himself in a different branch of the multiverse. But I do believe in a multiverse, though. I think that every time we make a great decision, that the universe branches again. That it's like a great fractal, and that we are part of that fractal, and there's another universe where we didn't make a certain decision, or we did make a certain decision. And it keeps going in that universe. It's another line, and that's us, but it's a different reality from our own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I see it, is it's branching realities, and somehow or another they all spin together, and it's a great Mandela. It's more the Mandela effect than the Mandela effect. I mean, it's like a great spinning wheel.
That was a big trending topic on YouTube for quite a while.
Sure it was.
But I've had some strange things happen. Now, I've had dreams where I've seen this UFO photo, and it turns out a year later I see it on Security 10, and I say, I've seen that UFO before, and I've analysed it before. So I'm not sure if there's some sort of time loop happening, but there's a lot of time. What's that noise in the background?
My wife is making coffee.
Oh, right. So what it is.
Sorry.
We're not being haunted. I thought we
we
might be haunted or something.
No, the coffee grinder back there.
Yeah, I've had...
We're getting ready to tuck in.
I've had visions that have come true, which I can't... There's another thing I can't explain in my life.
That happens. Me too. I've had that.
No, I've
had like psychic flashes on stuff where if I hadn't followed them, my life would be very different right now, and not good. You know, I've had psychic flashes where I was warned off of certain paths, and I listened, and here I am.
Well, I've had dreams that come true. Well, I've had glimpses of dreams that come true that I couldn't explain. But I
haven't had that. Wow.
But I was experimenting with a negative ion generator, and I had a really good one that used to pump out a lot of ions before someone touched their finger on it and blew the circuit board. But I used to have it close to my bed, and I started getting these vivid dreams which come true. And I can't explain that either, you know, and they turned out to be warnings, you know. It was trying to warn me, or not to avoid these people or these places. But yeah, but I don't get them anymore, but I have these visions of UFOs that I've never seen before until they appear on the internet. And I think, the classic one was that sun balloon that Tyler was pumping out, and it had...
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
shit.
I said,
Sorry,
I said, oh, he's repeating the episode. I said, I'm sure I've seen this. Funny. I've seen this balloon before. So I started doing search on the internet to try and find that particular image, and I couldn't find it. And I realised then it was actually in a dream. So maybe we're in the Matrix.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk about that. I mean, Elon Musk thinks that we're in the Matrix. You know? I mean, he truly believes that. He thinks that we're in somebody's game. You know.
Well, we could be.
Maybe we are.
Had you prove it is or not, really?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you can't really prove it because you're part of the experiment. If you're part of the experiment,
there's actually been a few sci-fi movies on that sort of covered that recently.
Sure.
Let's see, what was that TV 10-part one? Where they can transfer their minds from one body to another, make these what do you call them, clones of themselves or whatever.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, there's Westworld right now, which is about AI.
Well, that's not quite the same though. I can't think of it now. You know, it's one of those. It's one of those things where your brain gets older and your memory's not as good.
We're not experiencing synchronicity right now, Paul.
Yeah, it'll come to me after.
Are, but we're not getting
the names of the sci-fis will come to me after we've
But there's
stopped
been a
talking
million
about it.
science fiction books on that sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm a science fiction fan. I've always been one. You know, I mean, I think there's a reason why I've always been a science fiction fan.
I think
fiction is truer than reality sometimes.
I think most of the ufology people are sci-fi fans, though. I think that's why they follow a lot of these hoaxes because it plays into their fantasy or sci-fi. You know, UFOs and abductions, and even if
Well,
it's not
people
real.
have a vision within themselves of how they think the universe should be. And of course, the universe doesn't necessarily go along with how we think it should be. You know, the universe is a universe. It's a cruel place. You know, this is a universe where you have, you know, wasps that lay their eggs. And, you know, I mean, Alien is true. You know, I mean, there's you know, biology that can back that stuff up. And it's a scary place, and sometimes we're just trying to. I think that people are trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And to make sense of it all, sometimes they reach towards the senseless to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I've done it, you know, before, you know, when I was younger. Now I'm more of a skeptic about stuff, and I want to have proof about things. But, you know, I mean, as far as ghost encounters go, you can get EMF readings. You know, you can have multiple people that will say, yes, there was a cold spot here and it moved here. And then we heard a voice, you know, on our recorder here. But
speaking of that, I mucked around with some Android app that was meant to record voices, and I thought, oh, I'll give it a try. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said, is anybody there? And suddenly the room got a cold spot next to my bed, and this app would use your Android phone to measure EMF. I don't know how it works, but it's worth checking out some of those applications. I think it works by using those sensor chips in your phone and using the antenna as a receiver. But I'm not sure how
it's the same as a compass, you know.
Yeah, but I put this thing over. This thing was actually going higher and higher in this cold spot. And this cold spot moved. And when I played it back, I could hear these two people whispering. And I thought, wow, that's creepy as. So I tried so I thought I'd try and save it to PC. And somehow I ended up deleting it. So I thought, damn it, I made a mistake. Damn it, I've lost it forever, because you can't undelete it on Android.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
I had a guy that got a video of a perfect video of a UFO recently, and of course, but I was trying to post it to YouTube, and I accidentally erased it. Yeah, it's like, well, oh well, you know. But yeah, I mean, and I don't know if, you know, I mean, sometimes it feels like the evidence goes away purposefully. It's very strange.
Yeah.
And the paranormal stuff is more frustrating. You know, with ufology, it's like my boss, Jeff Krause, is a nuts and bolts UFO guy. You know, he gives me most of his abduction cases for a reason, because he just doesn't like them. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so weird, so out of left field.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, just try explaining it with physics. Forget it. You know, our physics are just not there. I mean,
we were going to talk about abduction cases with you, but you didn't have them handy.
I have a bunch of them. I have good ones.
So maybe we'll talk about that on another episode.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
In more detail.
I mean, I spoke with Peter Robbins today for a long time, and he was Bud Hopkins', you know, left-hand man.
All right.
And, you know, he has, you know, I mean, talk about abduction cases. This guy started investigating back in the late 70s with Bud. You know, who was now the penultimate. You know, he's not with us anymore, but he was the guy that started that, and it was his forte. Yeah. We don't have John Mack anymore. That was the other guy. We have a few people. But, you know, thank God for, you know, Kathleen Marsden, you know, who's still doing that, you know, who's MUFON, thank God. And I sent a lot of people to her. I sent a lot of abductees to her. You know, if they need a group that can support them, or, you know. Yeah,
you want to sort of give people the peace of mind that they're not losing their minds or something, and so that it's actually happening for real.
Yes, there's not a whole lot that you can do if you're an abductee now.
No.
Apparently, I mean, if you're a Christian, you can call on Jesus. I've heard a few people say that works, though. I mean, well, you know, you call out to your God, and there's no higher source for those people, and it seems to work for them. I think that it comes down to just sort of putting it in its place and creating a barrier, and that apparently works for some people, but it usually doesn't. Usually doesn't.
Yeah, I've
usually
heard,
if you're being abducted, you're going to be abducted, and you just hope that the memory erasure that they're using, however they do that technologically, will continue working, or else your life is really going to be screwed. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people forget their abductions, and it comes back with hypnotic regression, or they'll have like bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing, because that's pretty scary. You know.
Yeah.
You don't have any control over that.
I used to think abductions were crazy people and sleep disorders, but I've changed.
Some of it is.
I've changed my mind.
Some people are made crazy by it.
Mm.
You know, I mean, a lot of people suffer from PTSD.
Well, that's true. They could have a condition they don't know about. That's why it should be investigated, and maybe also with medical people that can do these checks.
Yes.
And also those psychology tests and things. But I think from the experts that they've done all that, and they know that there's a group of people that are really truly experiencing something unreal, and there's not much they can do about it, really, is there? But
well, it seems like it should be unreal, but it's very, very real.
Yeah.
To them.
I know there was some chat on your Facebook today about trying to catch them on camera to prove it, and we've talked about that before, but
yes.
I won't go over it now. We'll talk about it in another episode.
Yes, we will. Sure we will.
But
I met with a gentleman a few nights ago who had implants surgically removed from his body, and he still actually has one of them.
Right.
The first one he sent to the Air Force.
Oh, they're really like that.
Of course, he never got it back again,
No.
and they didn't say anything about it. He sent it to the Air Force. They gave him an address to send it to, and he never got the implant back.
No.
But strangely enough, an implant re-emerged in the same area, and he did get photos of it from a microscope, and there were like these little tubes in it.
Right.
It was very straight, very, very weird.
This case is still ongoing?
This is not even a MUFON case. It's somebody that came to me outside of MUFON. He doesn't want a case. He wanted to talk with me. He wanted to show his photos, and he still does have the implant. And, you know, this was somebody that was not into UFOs. Of course, well, now he is.
Right.
And you know, he's probably listening to some people that he maybe shouldn't be listening to. But,
right.
but you know, I mean, it was out of left field. He had no criteria to go by. He had this strange thing that appeared in his leg. He went to a surgeon. They took X-rays, and then they did the MRI, and it was this strange disc-shaped thing that had flower petal-like things around it.
Mm.
And then it was connected to two wires.
Wires?
Yes.
I've never seen wires on implants before.
Well, I've actually heard. I know a couple of cases that are exactly the same as his.
Right.
And of course, I mean, he had no idea about them.
So you're about to dig up those cases for another episode?
We can talk about that, certainly, yes.
And then you can talk about those cases that had similar implants. That would be really good.
But ghosts are ghosts. How the hell do you make sense of ghosts? I can't. But I feel like I've had encounters with people that I've lost.
Yeah.
My mom did. You know, my mom saw her father.
Yeah.
She was in her old home, first time in many, many years. She went there. There was a new family that lived there, and they kind of, it was like she said, well, can we come in and maybe just hang out? This is my childhood home. And she was sitting there at the table with this, this family that lived in her old house, and she looked into the kitchen and she saw her father. This was my grandfather, who I was named after. As her father, Earl. Earl Maven was his name.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that he was at the stove and he turned around. He had like overalls and a cap on his head. That's what he always wore.
Yeah.
And he turned around and he looked at her and he looked surprised. He stood there and he stared at her. Their eyes met. He looked surprised and then he disappeared. And that was my mom's one and only ghost story, but it's a good one.
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
She also had ball lightning experience, wasn't it?
She had a ball lightning experience when she was a young girl, when she was a teenager. She and her sister were asleep on the porch in their house. They had a screened-in porch in Iowa. It becomes very humid during the summers there, where sweat kind of runs down your nose. So you get a sleeping bag and you sleep on the screened-in porch. And a fireball came through the side of the room. It just came through the screen. And she said that it buzzed like a hive of bees. And it was sparks flying off it, like a big ball of sparkler fireworks, right?
Very interesting.
And it pushed through the screen, and it hovered over her sister, and she watched it hovering over her sister, and then it came over to her. And then it tarried there for maybe 2 seconds, and then it went back to the screen, and it shoved through the screen, and she said that it sounded like an angry hive of bees. You heard sparks, you heard buzzing.
Red.
And it went through the screen.
Yeah.
So she got up. She was like 16 years old at the time. She ran after this thing. And it led her through across the fields. They were living in a little farm in Iowa. And it went across her property to the neighbor's property where they had a big cornfield planted.
Yeah.
And she chased it into the middle of the cornfield until she actually caught up with it.
Right.
And she said that she was standing right under it, and it was maybe 30 feet over her.
Wow.
And it was just hanging there like it was just a ball of sparks, buzzing. And you could smell ozone in the air. She said it smelled like a Lionel electric train, right?
Oh, right.
I had an electric train. She said that smells like the fireball.
I used to have one
when
too.
I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't think it was a UFO. She didn't think it was ball lightning. Is how she always described it. She stood under it, and she said that it just kept on buzzing there for a little bit, and then there was a pop.
Yeah.
And it disappeared, and then it just smelled like ozone.
Interesting. So not alien related, you reckon?
I don't know. It might have been. I mean, her
alien probe.
Her future life, the way that it went, she was working in underground bases and stuff.
Yeah.
And she knew about UFOs. I have no idea if it was related, but
no.
These things seem to happen to the same people for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But experiencers are experiencers.
Yeah. So what age was she when that happened?
She was 16.
So she didn't start working for the underground base stuff until what age?
She was in her She was in her late 20s.
Yeah. So there's quite a big gap between that. I don't think it's related, but it's still an interesting story.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It might have just been ball lightning.
I've got
just ball lightning.
Yeah, I've got stories in my old 40-year-old collection books here in UK of passing through windows and kitchens and just hovering over the kitchen table and then disappearing. So it sounds very similar, ball lightning.
Yeah. Well, I know she saw it. Her sister didn't see it. She was asleep. But she never discounted my mom's story.
No.
I mean, I think that she knows it happened, but my mom was the witness to it.
Yeah.
As she was to a few things in her life. She was an interesting woman.
I wonder if they're related to crop circles. You said it went to a field.
It could be. It did go to a field. It went to a cornfield.
Also, they talk about they also talk about ley lines. I think where these things happen. I think it was mentioned in the books. I believe that ley
lines are a real thing, and I think that that it's something that should be looked into scientifically. Actually.
Well, yeah, EMF meters and all that sort of stuff, and actually prove it's different. You should be able to walk to it, and then your meter should go crazy, and then you should walk past it again. Years ago, we mucked around with Dowson sticks. I didn't believe in them at first, but we were out at a paddock with my uncle's place, and they were trying to figure out a place to put a water well. And this guy came out with his Dowson sticks, and everybody was watching him, and he said, "Oh yeah, this is the best spot with the sticks cross." And so they all wanted to have a go and see if they could get the same effect. And only half the people could get it to work in the same spot. Others, it just didn't do anything. So they gave it to me when I was out there, because I showed up later, and I tried it, and it didn't work at first. And I think it's to do with your mental mind state, because I didn't believe in it. And I kept mucking around with these divining rods, which is basically number fence 8 wire. And I tried it around our house one day, and they suddenly started crossing at a certain place in the driveway. And I said to Dad, I think there's water down there. He said, "Go on with you, you couldn't do it anyway." And he didn't believe that I was able to do it. So years later, we dug up, they were digging up the street or the house next door, and they found an old water pipe that led straight across our driveway where these sticks were crossing. And I said, "Well, there you go. I found that spot years ago, and you didn't believe me." And it was pretty amazing, really.
Wow.
So I reckon...
And that was your well, huh?
No, this is our property at home, which is miles away from this paddock where they were drilling for water. So I mucked around with it at home because I was interested in it, because it was working for Dad and it wasn't working for me, and I was trying to figure out why, whether it's related to static energy around your body or how you gripped them. But yeah, they reckon it's psychology based, that you tilt your hand slightly. But it might be. Your body might be picking up something, and it causes you a slight reaction in the hand, which makes them cross. But I knew I did this with my eyes closed, and it would cross, even. So it wasn't influencing it, and it was doing it by itself. So maybe
for thousands of years.
Maybe
how they found their wells,
maybe it's related to your mind state, whether you believe it or not, and also how old you are, because probably it got better as I got older. So maybe...
We don't understand it. It's just something that we don't understand yet. Maybe never will.
Have you tried it out yourself? Have you tried divining rods yourself?
I've never tried divining rods.
You should have a play with them and see if you can do it, Get 3 containers and put one with water in 3 identical containers and see if it will work, and try different people. It's quite an
experiment. Yes. I mean, somebody's already done that. Somebody's already done that experiment. I mean, they may have found that it actually worked. I mean, we don't always hear, the results of stuff. No. Obviously, I mean, we know that people have tried. Like the film The Men Who Looked at Goats, stared at goats. I mean, that is a real thing. I mean, Ingo Swann, and there's amazing capabilities in the human mind that we haven't really processed yet.
Yeah.
As they say, there's like 95% of the mind that we don't know even why the brain has those cells yet. And I'm sure they're there for a reason.
Well, they say...
nature doesn't waste itself. If you have so many neurons, they're there for a reason. It's just that we haven't figured out why they're there yet. You know?
I think
there's a language center, there's the cognitive center, and there are centers that we probably don't understand why. I mean, we don't understand why they're there. They're there for a reason.
It's called fringe science, and we're still yet to discover things. And all you can do is.
So it makes life interesting.
Yet some people go through life and they don't have any of these strange things happen to them. So they end up being these skeptics and debunkers that don't believe in anything and only believe in science and what we see.
Skeptics have paranormal shit happen to them as well.
Yeah, there was.
I mean, I've known skeptics that had really scary paranormal things happen around them.
Yeah.
And I have one friend that came to me just like, how would you explain this? You know, and I don't know how to explain the paranormal to people really, except that, there's quantum entanglement that we know of, that we're part of the universe. So you can't really do an experiment truly about this stuff because we're part of it. It's like trying to look at a microscopic slide when you're on the slide itself.
Yeah.
But you can look at the stuff and you can at least notate it. And maybe somebody smarter than us, or maybe us, after some time can figure out why. But this stuff does happen.
Yeah, that's why you got to keep your mind open and keep researching stuff. I think Tesla was a bit like that. He used to do lots of experiments and sort of home in on stuff and try different things out.
He wasn't prejudicial like a lot of our scientists are today.
Yeah, it was a bit of think outside the box, I think, and he discovered things that other people obviously were working on as well, that he sort of improved on. He didn't actually invent AC, he actually made it practical. Yes. There were other people working on the same projects, but you ever look at his notes? They were he used to do amazing writings, and he knew mathematics and.
Well, Westinghouse wound up getting the money from the government, but Tesla wasn't Westinghouse, and he was but it's the same now, and
I think Tesla had some paranormal experiences as well, if I remember right. But
most of us have had at least something that we can't explain happen to us.
Yeah.
You get into a little group, and you're around the campfire. People start telling stories, and you hear stuff that people don't normally talk about. But it's usually something they can't explain that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah. My dad told Mum that he was in the garage and he saw this woman standing next to him in the garage in pure white, and she disappeared. So he may have got a visitation by a ghost.
Wow.
But he's never ever told me that story, but Mum told me it.
Wow.
So I said,
that's not very valid. You have to listen to those stories, and you have to notate them and pack them away, and they happen.
Yeah. I know
everything is not explainable in nuts and bolts terminology.
Yeah. I think he might have had a girlfriend that never got over him, and maybe she died. Who knows? But
they tend to return. Yeah.
It's interesting. People have these things happen, and they don't tell anyone about it, so you never hear about them. And that's about the same with the UFO field.
I think UFOs are actually, you can use science and you can talk scientifically about UFOs to a certain extent. But ghosts are a whole other game. And you can't necessarily explain it scientifically. It's a paranormal thing. It's beyond what we normally experience. UFOs are too, but, and there's usually a nuts and bolts kind of element.
Also, ghosts and experiences and ghost stories are always good for parties. Whenever I've gone to a party, I talk about the toy in the box and other paranormal stuff, and everyone's around dead quiet listening.
That's a weird one. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, electronics don't work without some power source.
Yes, not with batteries.
No, there's no way that could have happened.
That's what all of them say. They say, nah, we don't believe it.
It's paranormal. It couldn't have happened normally. So,
yeah.
Mark yourself as one of the lucky ones or unlucky ones that have experienced something like that. That's very strange, and I can't explain that.
No.
I mean, I guess that any electronic thing can have a little store of the battery in there still.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just,
that needs a bit of
that's
current,
really
though.
pushing it.
Yeah,
know?
Electric motor and lights flashing. I think it needs a bit of current.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that without something that's
wireless power.
it.
So yeah, well, probably should wrap it up there. It's getting a bit long now, I suppose.
Sure, that was fun.
Well, we talk about these. We talk about these things in text writing on Facebook all the time, and I keep saying, "Oh, we should actually be talking about this and recording it because my people that follow me on channel would be actually interested in what we have to say." But I talk about science bits quite often.
Me too, usually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have some paranormal stuff I didn't even tell you about. I mean, I've had patients. As a nurse, I'm a working nurse. And I lost one patient who I worked for some years.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was getting in touch with me. There were synchronicities that happened.
Yeah.
And it was like cosmic jokes sometimes, where it was just like I could feel him standing on the sidelines laughing and going, "See, Earl, it would be some ridiculous, funny thing that we had talked about, and then it would be happening to me, and I would and at one point the same person, it was the anniversary of his death 3 years later.
Yeah.
And people kept calling me up, and there were all of these weird synchronicities going on. I had one friend finally who called me up saying the chorus of the song that I wrote for this guy who died. His name was Eric, right? And he calls me up and didn't say anything. He started saying, "Eric, my brother," and and it's like, "Why did you sing that? Why did you call me up and sing that?" He said, "I don't know. I heard that song in my head all day, and I called you up and I sang that. It was the third anniversary of his death." And this was a guy who waited until his parents were out of town. He was a quadriplegic, and I fully believe that he chose that time to die. Okay. He wanted to wait until his parents were not in town, so that they didn't have to deal with it. And he sort of handed it to me. It's like, "It's all yours, Earl. It's all yours, dude. I love you, but you deal with this. I'm out of here." And there were a whole bunch of things that happened around him. Yeah. And I have no question in my mind that this friend of mine, Eric, was coming to me from the other world, wherever he went when he died.
Yeah.
He wanted me to talk to his mom 3 years later and call her up on the phone and say, it's your son's, the anniversary of your son's death, and I was thinking about him today, and I just wanted to call and say, I love you, and I'm thinking about you.
Right.
I wasn't going to do that originally. I didn't want to even remind her. Maybe she didn't, but of course she remembered,
Yeah.
And there was Eric, like knocking on the door, and he was using all my friends to remind me.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what the date was. I didn't even know what the date was. It took me all day until I finally figured out, oh my God, this is 3 years to the day that he died.
Right.
And I called his mom up and I told her his message, and that was that. Mm-hmm. And I've actually never had any contact with the family since, but right. I did what I was supposed to do. And, I feel like he was trying to connect with me, that he wanted that for his mom.
Right.
I served the purpose of what he wanted. He was a good friend, and now he's gone into the light, I guess, because I have never experienced anything else from him. But that was a real thing. It happened in my world, happened in other people's worlds as well. And I think if you talk to anybody that was part of that, it would tell you that that was something inexplicable.
Yeah. Well,
there's no way to explain it scientifically.
I've heard stories from various people on ghost stories of their experience, and where they've had their child die, and they've seen them walk past a window in the hallway in pure white. So I've heard lots of stories of people seeing things like that. And I've got another mate that lives up in the hills here, and he's in a house that he's modifying, and he reckons that he's seen shadows come up the stairs there, but he's not recorded it, and he's never told anyone about it, which is quite interesting. But I've woken up, and I could swear that there's a shadow person bending over me and looking at me, and I simply just say to them in my head, "Bugger off," and I turn over and then go back to sleep, because
that's a good way to deal with it.
Yeah,
that's what I usually do too, Paul. Yeah.
But I just think, well, was I imagining that because I'd just woken up? But it's funny because I got woken up twice in that same night, and both times this was this darker image next to the bed that I couldn't really figure out what it was. And it definitely looked like a person bending over trying to whisper something to me. So yeah, some strange things happen, and you just think whether you're losing your mind or not, or it's just a dream. And that's how people write it off, you see.
Sure.
So I don't know who it was, if it's a relative or friend, or someone trying to warn me about.
Maybe it's just some random ghost that likes your webcast that you do.
Well, lucky it's not in the middle of the night now. Else it would be a bit more creepy talking about ghost stories. But it's probably nearing my dinner time, so I probably have to start heading off. And must be late.
That's all good. Well, Paulie, I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
I love everything that you do.
Right.
And you're my dear friend. And I don't tell everybody about my ghost stories, but I'll tell you. Of course, it all ends here at your ears. Ha ha.
Well, everybody will
Go
hear
ahead
it.
And share it as you want. I can't explain my ghost stories. I have a few of them.
Yeah.
I probably have more ghost stories. I have more personal ghost stories than I have personal UFO stories.
Right.
I only have, I'm not even willing to share in public, one of my UFO stories.
Right.
But the ghost stuff is strange. I guess it's what connects us all.
Oh, you'll have all the audience now saying, "Tell us, tell us, tell us." You got to tell us now. You can't say there's a hidden ghost story. You can't say you got.
I'm not sure if it was MK Ultra or ET, but I don't want to go there. So
no, okay.
Maybe someday,
someday on your deathbed.
I can't explain it, so I don't want to tell it. It's weird stuff happens, and thank God, weird stuff happens to people that we write it down, we think about it, and it sometimes haunts us. It always haunts me. The stuff I can't explain haunts me every night, every day.
Oh well, friend, or leave it there, and I'll stop recording now probably, and
sleep well, mate. You have a great night.
I'll see if I can
next time, Paul.
Yeah, I'll see if I can turn it into an episode and upload sometime tonight.
Sweet. Have fun.
Okay, see you, mate.
You do great with that stuff, so
yeah, bye.